whole school behaviour policy is extremely important. It needs to be followed up consistently by all members of staff across the school. It also needs to be very clear to the pupils what that policy is in order for them to be able to follow it.
I think it's really important, especially if you go in cold as an NQT or a student, so you can be consistent with what the rest of the school is doing. If you know the sanctions, and you can appear confident and follow up the sanctions in the appropriate manner. And obviously you could adapt it slightly to yourself and how you're going to manage the children within your own classroom. But to have a basis of the whole school behaviour policy, then you've got a good start.
Teacher and learning assistant, maybe with the class for 4 years, and may know more than the class teacher.
Yes.
So that in terms of history, they can, in half an hour, can tell you such a lot of information.
Often, the teaching assistants live in the local area. They will probably know that child by sight and vice versa, and they might have their own children at the school. They might have been in that same class when that child's elder sibling was in that class, and they will have those kinds of knowledge and relationship. They tend to be really plugged into the community of the school.
Basically, children need to feel that they're involved in the lesson and that you're teaching them how to behave properly, and that they're aware of how that's going to help them learn, sort of learning to learn, really. So learning to listen, learning to share appropriately, and sort of motivation skills. I worked a lot this year on motivating. Why are you learning this?
If you can get work to the right level for your classes, then you're halfway to managing the behaviour in those classes. Often, the naughtiest kids in the classroom are the brightest kids in the classroom, and it's because they're not challenged enough that they find it easy then to kick off, because they could do that work in 10 seconds anyway. And I know when I did my training that you have a lot of spiel from people about look at prior attainment data and look at their key stage 2 levels and all this type of stuff. And when you train, I personally found that very difficult to take on board, but once you've got your head around it, it's really one of the key things to planning your lessons. Pupils can be really honest with you, and you need to use that honesty with them. So if they've done work in 10 seconds, you can ask them, why was that so easy? What would you have found made it a bit more challenging? It's really good to start your lessons with, does anybody think they know about this? Or what might you know about this before you came into the room? Because they don't just want a repeat of maybe stuff they did in year 5 or year 6. It's great to go and see those classes with other teachers. There's huge opportunity for that, especially when they're taught in the same sets throughout the year. And if you know there's a good teacher that is getting them to behave, or getting maybe a particular pupil to behave, you can ask that pupil, well, what subjects do you like and where do you get a lot of work done? And then go and watch them specifically for that pupil or group of pupils, and then you get a chance to see, oh, maybe I could do that, or, well, that's quite a good little trick to use with them. But if you don't get the work right, then it's really hard to manage the behaviour. And if you go and watch other people teaching and you think, oh God, this lesson's really boring, if I was a kid I'd be throwing paper around at the back of the room, then see what it is that teacher's doing that makes, you know, maybe makes it, or lessons where you're so involved you're not writing down any observation notes because you're really involved in the lesson, or how have they made that climate in their classroom that everybody wants to get involved with it? But
I think there's some clear golden rules, you know, sort of be clear and consistent, firm but fair. And, you know, I've tried to do as a teacher, which what I believe in, is to try and make it safe, because a lot of children put their hand up and go, and, you know, get it wrong. And I say, that's fine. I'd rather you get it wrong and be part of the lesson than, you know, just sit there and feel like you can't answer a question.
If you've tried group work and it's been absolutely awful, then you do need to take a step back from it and think, why was it awful? I mean, my first group work I did was period 6, last lesson of the day. That had a huge impact on why it was a disastrous lesson. So you do need to be able to not just think, oh, that was awful, I'm not trying it again, but trying it again in a safer way maybe, or a more supportive way. And I often say to my kids that this is really difficult, you're not going to get this today, and kind of exaggerate it a bit. And then when they do get it, in the end of the lesson they say, oh yeah, I understood that. They feel such a sense of achievement that they've understood something really difficult. So having a bit of challenge in it as well.
And I think you have to be fun, you have to be motivated, and you have to be pacey. You know, the lesson, if the lesson's dragging, the bright kids will drop off. And if the kids who haven't quite got everything, then you bring them on the carpet or at the front of the classroom after you've set the class off, because that's differentiation.
The rewards and sanctions ratio should be roughly 4:1. By that, 4 forms of reward for every 1 discipline sanction that's put in place. in practice it's just very difficult to adhere to that, but obviously as long as you try and bear that in mind, you're not going to go far wrong. But don't forget, a reward can be anything from well done, or maybe bringing to the attention of the class an excellent piece of work or something that's been successful. Getting the rest of the class to perhaps award or acknowledge that in some way. Students like to have their hard work and effort acknowledged, like we all do.
Primary schools, we try to get the children to be responsible for their own actions as well, so we would be encouraging through class councils and school councils the children to actually come up with what they think are good sanctions, what they think are good rewards, and maybe if there's a difficult situation arising in the classroom, actually stop the class and say, hang on a minute, let's just talk about this, and what do you think should happen as a result. So that's very good at training the children in sort of the areas of citizenship as well.
And I think you need to be open, but you also need to be very clear straight away. And obviously, the other thing we were talking about was you've got to back it up. You know, once you've set your rules, you have to then apply them.
You need to do it in a way that will let them take ownership of what they want in their classroom, because then they, you know, are more likely to follow those rules if it's not just you saying, do this, do that, that's what I want. If you're saying this is what we want, then when it comes to disciplining them about it, you can say, look, as a class we've decided we don't want people throwing things around the room. We want people having their own private space that we are safe in and we can work in, and you're not doing what the rest of the class wants. So you're taking a bit of the confrontation out of it, between it being you're not doing what I want you to do and you're not doing what our community wants you to do. But I think a trade-off of what you're going to do in return for them having good behaviour, it needs to be quite clear, and simple things like regularly marking books or something like that can be just as powerful as we're going to have 10 minutes of games at the end of a lesson. So I think it does need to be a two-way thing. Your rules can be that bit of your classroom where it is behaviour focused, and I would say you should definitely try and make them positive rules instead of don't do this, don't do that. It's what you are going to do, so the positive behaviours you want to see. And I do know some teachers, I haven't tried it myself, but some teachers that take photos of the positive behaviour that they want to see. So if it's group work and everyone's leaning in and listening, they take a photo of it and have it up on the wall. This is what we do when it's group work. This is what I want to be seeing. Or look, this is what I can see from this group. Well done. And just always going over it and over it again and again and again, rewarding what you want to see.
You can model it yourself, can't you? You can come in and you can ham it up. Come in the class and say, right, I'm making a perfect entrance. Come in, sit down, get your books out, read your book. And the kids giggle, you have a laugh, and they're very clear. Because sometimes it isn't clear, you know. What does quiet mean? Is quiet silent or is it silent? And kids have got a whole grey area.
Like pack away, that can be quite vague, can't it? So instead of put your pencils back in your case, tuck your chair underneath, desk should be tidy, you're making it really clear.